The other day, I was casually browsing the internet and randomly came across an article about the most haunted places in Sydney. This caught my attention because I've always had a keen interest in paranormal and supernatural topics. One place that stood out from the rest was a street in Sydney called the Street with No Name. After reading about the history behind this infamous street, it slowly dawned on me that this area is indeed haunted and is a hotbed of paranormal activity. There has been several murders that took place near this area, and people have reported seeing and hearing strange things till this very day. I felt drawn to this location and decided to get my camera gear and make a documentary about this place. This video contains footage of this location. As I was driving there, I kept having anxiety of whether I would attract evil spirits back into my home. I watched a lot of filmmakers who film haunted locations, and they report upon their return bad things happen to them and their family. It was like they were cursed. However, I still wanted to document this area because I felt like it was the right thing to do. Despite the risks, I knew I would need to commit and go check out this place myself. My plan was that if anything were to happen, I would definitely need to call upon a spiritual guide and to get rid of any negative spirits that may linger after filming this location. I also decided to film this location during the day. I don't think I'll be ready to be filming this place at night. Maybe another time. So I got out of my car and started walking towards a street with no name. The street with no name is located in Glebe, Sydney. There's been several murders that took place around this particular street. People believe that this street is haunted and attracts negative spirits. I was surprised on how easily it was to get to. When I got there, I noticed that the fence was already open, and therefore you can simply walk in and have a look around. When I got to the fence, I walked straight in. So the story of the street with no name begins in 1966. A railway worker was working on the railway tracks. He was trying to save a possum that was stuck on the tracks. As he was rescuing the possum, he was struck and killed by a train that appeared in the foggy darkness. In 1968, a 3-year-old boy, Simon Brook, went missing near his family home on Alexandra Lane in Glebe. He was playing around on his front yard, and an hour later he was gone. His body was discovered not too far from the house. In 1976, a 12-year-old boy had disappeared from a nearby park. His body was found in Jubilee Park right next to the street with no name. A few months later, a girl's body was found dumped in the car park nearby. People believe that it was a satanic murder. In 1977, another 12-year-old boy went missing, and his remains was also found on Jubilee Park. And just recently, a homeless man was sleeping on the grandstand overlooking Jubilee Oval and was murdered. Many people who live here have reported hearing whispers and the sounds of footsteps when no one is around. They believe that it could be evil spirits that lurk around this area. People have also reported that children and dogs behave strangely around this area. As I was walking through this street, I couldn't help get the feeling of anxiety and fear. It was a bright Christmas day and hardly anyone was around, but I felt like there was someone in the trees watching me. Maybe that's just my mind playing tricks on me again. Once I finished doing the walking tour of the street, it was time to send in the drone and capture aerial shots of the street. The street is not too long, it's covered in various bush, there's rubbish along the sides of it, and it's located right next to the railway. Some people have reported seeing someone sleeping there. The sides are fenced off, and there's warning signs not to enter. There wasn't much of a smell to this place, however, if you walk through the sides of the street, then the smell becomes intolerable. Right next to the street with no name is a railway line that goes between Jubilee Park and the street with no name. This is where the first death occurred, where the railway worker was struck by a train while trying to save a possum. As I was preparing my camera equipment, I noticed some people taking photos on the tracks, which was quite dangerous. A train goes past this Jubilee Park station every 15-20 minutes. The train goes into a dark tunnel where it connects with the other train lines. You go down some steps and reach the viaducts under the railway line. Some people have reported hearing strange footsteps near here when no one was around. Some people have also seen apparitions and shadow figures near this location. As you approach the end of this path, you reach a small tunnel. As you go through it, if you look to the right, you'll see a small fence that is usually locked. However, I noticed that it was already open. This path connects you to the street with no name. This is where I noticed a really bad smell coming from this place. It had that homeless body odor smell, but you can't see any homeless people here, only some rags and rubbish lying around. I didn't want to walk through this area, so I left it alone and decided to continue walking around the side. The pathway curves along the street with no name until you reach another path. As you walk through the path, this is where it gets interesting. I noticed a sign that says "Do not enter" and a wooden plank that blocks your field of vision. Of course, the fence was already broken, so you can enter it if you want to, but this area becomes more elaborate. I feel they really don't want you to go through this area. Once again, the smell was really bad at this location, so it put me off exploring here. I turned around and headed back. The grandstand area is a small area that overlooks the Jubilee Oval. This is where the homeless person was murdered. Stories report that there was so much blood at the scene that they had to completely replace the wooden benches. I had this eerie vibe approaching this area, so I didn't stay for too long and decided to turn around and head back. So after filming this documentary, I overcame my fears of exploring a haunted location whilst also raising awareness. It was definitely an experience I'll never forget. As I was leaving Glebe, I couldn't help wondering how much pain the parents of the murdered victims had to endure. It's a great tragedy that they had to go through, and no words can console the loss of their loved ones. I can only hope that the victims may rest in peace and now living in a much better place.